Okay, welcome. This is the recording of the Rosh Hashanah sermon. In Stanmore, they ask us to wear masks even for the sermon. So here goes. Friends, before I begin, I'm going to be changing my mask. I want to explain why I'm going to be changing my mask. This year's been a tough year for many of us, financially too. So I thought to myself, maybe I should approach a company. I'll tell them I'm speaking in front of a couple of hundred people, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Maybe they'll pay to have their logo on my mask. After all, referees are sponsored. Why can't rabbis be sponsored too? And therefore, presenting you with my special Tesco mask for Rosh Hashanah. A wonderful company, a wonderful organization. Now, I imagine many people over here are rather upset. Some people are nodding their heads, thinking, well, the rabbi has business sense. But I think most people here would be upset. We'd get emails into the shul office saying how angry, irate, I can't believe it, appalled, mortified, if you can use such words, on a day where the books of death and life are before us. But whilst emotion is absolute and total, intellect is partial. And therefore, let's use our intellect to analyze together where these feelings are coming from. I think most of us, if we saw a Tesco poster outside in the hall, we'd think it's a little bit incongruous, maybe doesn't fit, but I don't think we'd be that annoyed. But imagine if I opened up this ark over here, and the Sifrei Torah, the Torah scrolls, were emblazoned with Tesco logos on. What would we be feeling? We'd be upset. We couldn't tolerate that. And the reason is very simple. That which is sacred deserves to remain as such. Things that are sacred need to be treated as sacred. And if they're not, that's intolerable. In Hebrew, the word is chilul. Chilul is from the word chol, treating something as mundane, as everyday, and we can't tolerate chilul. People, I'm sure you've guessed it by now, but this isn't really a sponsorship ad. My wife made this. It's not real. I didn't really approach Tesco. But for a rabbi to have got up on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur and used those sacred days as vehicles to advertise supermarkets, that would be chilul, and we cannot tolerate chilul. Theme is very simple. That which is sacred, keep it as such. The problem is it's so difficult to apply. I've been to a few weddings in my time. Weddings are sacred after all. I've never ever seen a bride walking down the aisle and the groom under the chuppah on his phone, too busy to look at her, or watching a sports game. That would be chilul, that would be intolerable. But just as weddings are sacred, marriage is also sacred. So why is it that sometimes one spouse wants to get the attention of another spouse? They're on their phone, they're watching a sports game. That's also chilul. That should also be intolerable. Family is sacred. We've seen that over lockdown. So how come machlokas, arguments, broges, ridiculous disputes over different things, that's also chilul, that should also be intolerable. Our bodies are sacred. Preserving life is sacred. That means how we dress. That means how we speak, how we express ourselves, what we look at. That's also sacred. Preserving life, it's also sacred. Doing otherwise should be intolerable. It should be chilul. I think the problem here is that many of us, myself included, see ourselves as scratched cars. What I mean by that, when you get a new car, it's lovely, you drive it, you feel very special, new car, you make sure that you're not going to get any scratches on your new car. But once that first scratch appears, you think to yourself, oh, one scratch, another scratch, what difference does it make? Some of us don't see ourselves as sacred because once we've made one mistake, another mistake, a third mistake, we don't feel sacred anymore. But each and every one of us need to realize we are sacred. And if you don't believe me, look at the history of the Jewish people, what they've done, what they've contributed, what they do for society, what they do in their own lives. We're sacred. We have to realize it. And sacred people don't get flustered when others criticize them. Sacred people don't criticize others. They look for the good in others. Sacred people perhaps worry a little bit less about where their next holiday is going to come from and focus a little bit more on building their internal world. Sacred people maybe take a couple of minutes in the evening and talk to God about what concerns them and ask him to help. Friends, today God has a decision to make. In the literary world, we call this an editorial decision. Are we going to be in the book of life, or are we going to be in another book? But equally, we have a decision to make. And that is, do we listen to a world that says there's nothing sacred? It's a world of chilul. Or do we stand up and say it's not just about emotion, subjectivity, feeling things are sacred. There are things that are really sacred. The Torah scrolls are sacred. Our nation is sacred. Your words are sacred. How you dress is sacred. Life is sacred. Your body is sacred. And we stand up and say we're sacred. And sacred people make sacred decisions. And sacred people go in a certain sacred book. And therefore, on behalf of myself, the shul, Tesco, and every other supermarket, I wish you a Shana Tova, a good year, happy year, and healthy year. And next time you do go past that Tesco logo, you might think it's saying every little helps, but it's really telling you that you're sacred, with a sacred mission, hopefully a sacred year ahead. Shana Tova.